Today's learning target is I can change units in the customary system.
Today we're going to be using customary units of measurement, and these are the measurements that we use in the United States to measure the length, how long something is, the weight, how much it weighs, or the capacity, how much liquid it holds. And so all of these are different customary units, and this chart here is in your book as well, so you're going to want to refer to that today when you use when you do your assignment.
When we're going to be converting one unit into another unit, the key for us, the most important thing, is going to be to know, are we going from a bigger unit to a smaller unit, or from a smaller unit to a bigger unit? So let's say, for example, we had a problem that looked like this, where it told us 2 feet equals how many inches. So what we're taking a look at here is we're going feet and inches are our two units. So I have to figure out which is larger, a foot or an inch. Now if I look here, I know that 1 foot is the same as 12 inches. So it takes 12 inches just to equal 1 foot. So I know feet are bigger than inches, because if I had 1 foot and 1 inch, well, it would take 12 inches to make 1 foot. Okay, so in this, I'd be looking, I'm going from bigger to smaller. Now here's why that's important. If I'm going from bigger to smaller, I'm going to be multiplying. Okay? If I go from a unit from smaller to bigger, I'm going to divide. And I'll show you how exactly that looks in a little bit. So let's say that I had 24 ounces is equal to blank cups. So the first thing again I need to do is I need to look which is the larger unit, ounces or cups. So when I go down here, I see 1 cup equals 8 fluid ounces. So if I went for 1 cup and 1 ounce, 1 cup is going to be larger. So here I'm going smaller to bigger. And when I do smaller to bigger, I divide. Now here's how I remind myself which is dividing, which is multiplying. So I say to myself, bigger to smaller, okay, so that is, I multiply. From smaller to bigger, I divide. Okay, now when I think about it, B and D are close to each other in the alphabet. So when I'm looking at this, I say, okay, smaller to bigger, okay, B and D, very close, so smaller to bigger equals dividing. Okay, then bigger to smaller, S and M are closer to each other than S and D would be. So S and M, so bigger to smaller, when I do this, I multiply. When I go smaller to bigger, B is very close to D, I divide. So try to remember that, and that's going to help you. Or even if you wanted to write this on the top of your assignment page today to remind yourself, you can do that. So let's take a look at how we convert. So this one says convert 20 feet into inches. Okay, so again, remember the first thing I want to do is figure out, am I going smaller to bigger or bigger to smaller? Now if I look down here, I know that there's 1 foot and 12 inches, so I know a foot is bigger than an inch. So I'm going bigger to smaller. Now I remember when I go from big to small, I'm going to multiply. So now I'm going to figure out what I multiply, and that's where I'm going to use this chart right here. So I am going from feet to inches. So what I need to know is how many inches are in 1 foot. So here it tells me 1 foot is 12 inches. So if I had 20 feet, I'm going to need to multiply. I'm going to take 20 times 12. So for every 1 foot, there's 12 inches. Okay, so I have 20 feet. So I'm going to need 20 groups of 12. That's what multiplying is, it's groups of. So now I multiply this out, okay, and I get 240. So my answer is 240 inches. So this means that in 20 feet there are 240 inches. Okay, for this one, 36 yards into how many feet? Okay, so 36 yards would be how many feet? So when I look down here, I see that there are 3 feet in 1 yard. Okay, so I'm going to need to know that. And I'm also yards and feet. I see that 1 yard is equal to 3 feet, so 1 yard would be larger than 1 foot. So I'm going here, big to small. So there again, I multiply. So if there's 3 feet in 1 yard, I'm going to need to find out in 36 yards how many feet there is. So I'd have to go 36 times 3, okay, because I'm going from bigger to smaller. And when I multiply that out, I get 108 feet. So in this problem here, it says Clarence mixes 1/4 of a cup of fertilizer with soil before planting each bulb. How many ounces of fertilizer does he use? So I'm going to set this up just like this. So this is how many ounces. Now I can see down here that 1 cup equals 8 ounces. And I see that cups are larger than ounces. So I'm going big to small. So again, I'm going to multiply here. So in this one, I'm going to be doing 1/4 times 8. Okay, or remember that's the same as 8 over 1. And remember, when I solve a multiplication problem, first thing I can do is simplify. And I look at 4 and 8, and 4 goes into both of those. So I can reduce them. So 4 divided by 4 is 1, 8 divided by 4 is 2. So that leaves me with 2, remember multiplying, I multiply across, over 1, which would be the same as 2. So 1/4 of a cup equals 2 ounces. So let's take a look at one here where we're going from smaller to bigger. So this one, quarts into gallons. Okay, if I'm looking quarts into gallons, I see that one right down here, and I see that 1 gallon equals 4 quarts. So 1 quart would be smaller than 1 gallon. So in this case, I'm going smaller to bigger. And I know that when I do that, the B for smaller to bigger is closer to the D for divide. So I'm going to be dividing. And just to make this a little simpler for right now, let's do 16 quarts equals how many gallons. We'll come back to this 15 in just a second. I want to show you this first. So we know that we're going to divide. We've already determined that because we're going from smaller to bigger. So in this case, what I'm going to be dividing is I'm going to take the number that I have, in this case 16, and I'm going to divide, and I'm going to divide this, in this case, by 4. So I'm going to put these 16 quarts that I have here and divide them into groups of 4. And how many groups am I going to have? So I know that 16 divided by 4 would equal 4. So 16 quarts would be 4 gallons. Now this one worked out pretty smoothly because 16 divided by 4 worked out perfectly. It goes in there a perfect number of times. Now let's go back to this 15 quarts. Alright, so now let's take a look at what it looks like 15 quarts into how is equal to how many gallons. Abbreviation for quarts here and for gallons. So again, I'm going smaller to bigger, so I'm going to divide. So now my problem is going to be 15 divided by, now how many quarts into a gallon? Let's see, it's 4 in this case. So I started out my division problem right here. Okay, now I got to the point where I'm at a remainder, but I can't have remainders when I'm doing this. So I have to make this into a decimal. Okay, so I go just like I do when I do my dividing. Now 4 goes into 30. How many times without going over? It's going to be 7. 7 times 4 is 28. Subtract, bring down. Okay, and I have 0 here. 4 goes into 20 5 times. 5 times 4 is 20. And now when I subtract that, I'm left with 0. So in this case, it's 3.75, or 3 and 75 hundredths gallons would be in 15 quarts.